All right, welcome back to Level 3, Part 3 of the statistical lesson here in Spreadsheets for Business. In this video, we're going to learn some of the more advanced statistical functions and capabilities that are built into Excel. You've probably learned by now there's a formula for everything. Well, almost, but we're going to learn some more here that are pretty cool and pretty advanced statistical functions. So here, let's take a look at our data that we're going to analyze in this video. We have a date column, a sales column, and what day of the week it is. So we start off here with January 1st, and we go to the end, and I wonder how far down this goes. Well, I could come over here and drag the bar down and eventually find some value. Oh, there it is, December 31st. Okay, so we have a year's worth of data. But there's a keyboard shortcut to do that, right? So if I come to this cell, and in the Windows operating system, I just hit the Control key and the down arrow, and it automatically takes me to the bottom. And then the Control up arrow takes me back up to the top. So for each day of the year, we have how many items we sold that day. We learned this formula to find out our weekday day type in a previous video. So what if I want to just find out, well, how many Sundays are there in the year? How many Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? So I want to look at this column of data, and if this day is Sunday, I want to count it in this cell. So let's go ahead and do that. Equals, I want to count if. Here are two different functions here, count if and count ifs. We'll talk about the ifs in a couple of minutes. But here I just want to count if, so parentheses, and I want to do the range. So this is the day that I want to count and compare it to this particular one. So I click on the top cell, and again, I could drag down to the bottom, but I'm going to hit Control, Shift, down arrow, and it automatically highlights all of those days. Now I can drag my way back up to the top. There's a shortcut for that too, but I'll get into that in a minute. Now I hit the comma key, and I click for my criteria. This is my criteria. So how many Sundays do I have in that column C? Click on that, close my parentheses, and I have 52. Now the natural tendency, don't do this, so I hope you're listening to this audio. If you just click and drag that down, you'll get a bunch of answers. But look what happens to the first day. We start out with C2 to C366. Because I dragged that formula down, it changed all of the row numbers. 3 to 67 to cell E3. C4 to 368. So as I drag it down, this range shifts on me. Hopefully remember from Module 1 where we can put the $ into the right place and fix this. So if I come down here, what do I want to lock in place? Well, it looks like I want to lock this row number in place. So let me go back up to the top. And if I just want the row number to be in place, I can click right in there and just put the $ in there. Another option for doing this is just click anywhere in that number and clicking F4. And it starts off by absolutely referencing it with the $C, $366. If I hit F4 again, it goes to C, $36, which is what I want. Hit it again, becomes $C, $366. Hit it again, it turns referencing off. So I can just keep hitting F4 until I get what I want. So that's what I want. Now, why don't I want to protect E2 with the $? It's because I want it to increment as I drag it down. For this cell, I want it to compare this range to Sunday. For this cell, I want this range to be compared to Monday, Tuesday, etc., etc. So now that I have the formula the way I want, I hit enter, and now I can double click on this little fill handle. And there's 53 Mondays and 52 of everything else. All right, let's build on this a little bit. What if I want to sum up all the sales for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? So I want to go through and find all of the Sundays. And I could do this 52 times, just scrolling through here, holding the Control key down and highlighting it all. But life's too short for that. See how we're up here to 183 for those 4 Sundays? There's a formula that'll help us do all that, and that is the dreaded SUMIF formula. So equals SUMIF. The range that I want to compare this Sunday to is all the data in column C. So for the range, that's the range that we match against the criteria. That's this chunk of data here. So I click on that cell, hit Control Shift down, and it gets me to the bottom. Now I told you I'd show you a shortcut to get back up to the top. If I hit the F4 key now, that's the key that toggles us through all of the referencing choices for that range of data. Well, I'm going to click on that, and it takes me back up to the top, and it toggles me through the different versions of referencing for that range. So that's cool. I want to do that. Hit comma. My criteria is this day, and I don't want any dollar signs in there. Now the sum range, that is this chunk of data here. So I click on that cell, Control Shift down arrow, gets me to the bottom, F4, F4, close the parentheses, and I get the sum for that particular day. So we're using these ranges of data, and it looks like we're going to be using them a lot over the rest of the assignment. So for these ranges, I can continue to click in there and do the Control Shift down or whatever. But we learned in a previous video that we can name these ranges of cells and just use those names in our formulas. So I want this column B data, Control Shift down. I'm going to give that range of cells a name. This can be sales 2018. Same with this day of the week. Control Shift down. Let me call this day of week. Now let me redo that formula right quick. So our range is day of week. There it is. If I type in the first few letters, comma, the criteria is this cell, comma, the sum range, that was the sales 2018. So I type in SA, and there it is, sales 2018. Hit the tab key, close my parentheses, enter, and we get the same answer, thankfully. And I'm going to copy that down by just clicking on that and double clicking on it. And now we have the sum per day. Very similar to that, we have the average per day. What is my average number of sales for each of these days of the week? Equals average if my range, that's this column C stuff, which I gave the name of days, day of week. There it is. My criteria is again this. And now my average range is that column B stuff, which I called sales. Tab, close my parentheses, and if I copy that down, we're good to go. So which is my busiest day of the week? Looks like Thursday, and then Wednesday, Friday, etc. Now here, see how those numbers all have different levels of decimal points after it? That looks a little confusing. So if I just want it to the nearest tenth, I could come up here and hit this key, and that will change the formatting of those items to the nearest decimal place. But it doesn't change the actual underlying number, which we learned before. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. So if I want this number calculated by this average if to be rounded to the nearest tenth, I can click on that, and out here in front of it, I'm going to put the word round, and I'm going to wrap this average function in a round function. Now I just come here to the end. See, I'm still in my round function. It's treating this average if calculation as just a number, which it is. Now if I hit the comma, number of digits, I want to round it to the nearest one decimal place. Close my parentheses, and we're good to go. Copy that down. Ta-da! All right, so now we've gone through the count if, the sum if, and the average if. Let's answer a little more complicated question. How many of these sales were above average? Well, that kind of begs the question, what is the average? So if I just come over here for the time being and say equals average, tab, that range of cells was called sales, close my parentheses. So the average is 67.97. So how many of these are greater than 67.9? Well, that's one question, but I also want it broken down for Sunday, how many days were above average. For Monday, how many days were above average. So we really have two criteria. Is this row Sunday? If it's not, go on to the next one. Keep going down here. Okay, so we found a Sunday. Now, is this number 80 greater than the average? So it's multiple criteria. So we need to use the count ifs count IFS. So equals count ifs. And there it is right there. Tab. So here we have criteria range 1. Criteria range 1 is this range here. So I called that day of week. There it is. Tab, comma. The criteria is this. If I close my parentheses and count it, it's like, okay, that's still 52. So right now there's no difference between this count if and this count ifs with the plural. But, comma, after we put in that comma, we now have a criteria range 2 and a criteria 2, ... So we can have multiple criteria ranges and criteria out here. So my second criteria is really, in this range, how many of these cells are above this? So my criteria range for this is sales, comma, and the criteria, I want to know if it's greater than 67.97. So I'm going to put in the greater than symbol, but the greater than symbol is actually a chunk of text. So to get the formula calculator to calculate this, I have to wrap that greater than symbol in double quotes. And then I can put in the, and then I could hard code the 67.97 into here, and it would work. But you know me and hard coding numbers in there, because if any of these numbers change, that formula then breaks and it doesn't give us the right answer yet. An improvement upon that would be to reference this cell, and I still get 17. But an even better way, rather than me just calculating this average and sticking it out on a sheet somewhere, I'm going to put that average formula here inside this count if statement. So, and average, parentheses, sales 2018, close my parentheses, and we get the right answer. This is a pretty complicated formula. We've got a whole bunch of stuff, and what's going on at what point, how did we get here? If you ever have a formula that you're not sure how it's working or it's misbehaving and you want to find out how to fix it, we'll talk about this more in Module 4, but let me show you this formula evaluator up here. So if I go to Formulas and Evaluate Formula, I'm pretty sure that this is only available on the Windows side. I've never been able to find it on the Mac, but it could be there. So if you're a Mac user, let me know if you find it. So if you open up this evaluate formula for this particular cell, see how this is highlighted? That means that that is the first thing it's going to do. So it's going to go out and find the day of the week, and it's going to evaluate that. And it goes out and finds that particular range of cells. Next, it's going to find E2. If I hit evaluate, okay, E2 is equal to Sunday. Then it's going to find out what sales 2018 is. It's going to come back with the cell range for that. Then it's going to find the sales range, evaluate. So now it's kind of broken it down into all the individual ranges. Now it's going to find the average value for that cell range. That's 67.97. Now it's going to stick together this greater than sign and 67.97. Now it's all highlighted. So now it's all going to work. So it's going to go out and find this, how many cells in this range are greater than 67.97. Hit evaluate, and it comes up with the 17. Close. Now I can highlight that and copy it down, and now I can find out how many days were above average for each of the days of the week. So it looks like Monday is my slow day. There's a tie here for how many above average days we have on Wednesday and Thursday. All right, let's show you some other statistical functions. I've got some columns hidden out here between J and U, right click, unhide. All right, let's introduce you to the frequency formula now. I want to know for each of these days, how many are less than 10? How many are between 10 and 20? How many are between 20 and 30? Rather than type those down by hand, if I highlight the bottom two, because it takes two for Excel to determine a pattern, then if I copy this down to like 160, now I want to know how many are in each of these bins, or if you want to think of them as a bucket, that's fine too. So the way we do this is our first formula that's called an array formula. So we want the same formula to go into all of those cells, so we have to highlight all of those cells simultaneously. Once you've got them all highlighted, click up here in the formula bar and say equals frequency, calculates how often values occur within a range of values, then returns a vertical array of numbers having one more element than the bins array. So that's what I want. My data array is the sales 2018 range, comma, the bins array is this range of cells here. Close my parentheses. Now the magic happens. In order to turn this into an array function, you can't just hit enter. You have to hit Control, Shift, Enter. And then it automatically creates an array out of all those formulas. So if you now look up in each of these cells, you'll see these curly brackets put in here. The only way those can get in there is if you do what I just did by highlighting all those cells, creating the formula, and then hitting Control, Shift, Enter. So now less than 10, I have 0. Between 10 and 20, I have 24. Between 20 and 30, I have 38, etc. All right, that's a good stopping point for now. We'll pick up in the next video with percentiles and quartiles. See you later.